We're going to move to our next session, Gender Balance in the Workplace. We're going to have Myra Kinds is the moderator for this panel. And Myra is the Black, Indigenous, and People of Color lead and trainer at Gender Equity and Reconciliation International. She's a licensed American Baptist minister to youth and a recognized leader in underserved communities, specializing in addiction and recovery, mental health, and domestic violence. Myra collaborates with the Black Ministerial Alliance and the Institute for Global Youth Programs and is a certified instructor in mental health, first aid, and recovering coaching. So Myra, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you and good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my introduction has already been given. I know that you can't see me on screen, and I'm sure that that will be corrected shortly, but I want to welcome you into this space. We want you to be inspired to work towards healing and transforming gender. And so this diversity and inclusion are the most important than ever in today's corporate world. This interactive panel will help you understand and guide you into creating a more inclusive society. We believe at Gender Equity and Reconciliation International, usually referred to as GERI, do this in a unique way. We believe that we heal together. And so the panel that is before you today is not only phenomenal women that are in the field and doing the work, but it's also courageous men who has stepped up and are also doing the work, and we do it together. And so at this time, I'd like to introduce to you one at a time, the panel for this afternoon, or depending upon what part of the day you are, this session. Let us begin with Chaya.
Thank you, Myra. And it's such a pleasure to be on this panel. And as you all probably know, I am the President, CEO, co-founder of PAM10, and also founder of SheTek. Really excited to be on this panel because this is a topic that is very dear to me. And obviously some of these questions and conversations that are going to happen today, I'll be able to share some of my experiences. And I'm really looking forward to a great conversation. Thank you,
Chaya. Will?
Thank you, Myra. My name is William Keepin, and I am by original training a scientist and climate change mitigation researcher. I worked in that field for 25 years and discovered quite a bit of sexual harassment taking place within our professional ranks. And so started an initiative to address this, which over time grew into way beyond what we ever expected into what is now Gender Equity and Reconciliation International. But it really started from sexual harassment in the workplace and has just grown from there. So I'm very happy to be here with you all today and to share some of our processes and our work with you.
Thank you, Will. Ariana. So Ariana, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Doesn't look like you. You might want to try clicking next to your little microphone icon in the bottom left there of your screen. There, you can sometimes toggle your mic there. Or no, you're on your phone. You can see if you can toggle your mic. That might help, Ariana.
Maybe in the meantime, Jorge can introduce himself.
Right, thank you. Jorge?
Yeah, hi, my name is Jorge Rico. I am a trainer and facilitator with Gender Equity and Reconciliation International. And I'm also a human resource professional in corporate environments, both in-house and as an external consultant for the past 27 years plus. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. And it looks like we now have a twin Ariana on to join us. Ariana, you want to try again? Unfortunately, we can't hear you. Okay, while Ariana troubleshoots, maybe we can proceed and then give Ariana an opportunity a little later to share. So before we get started, we thought that it would be important to just do a little poll. And so I have someone behind the screens, Meg, helping us out. Meg?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. I was trying to help Ariana get a self-help article going. Could you?
You want to bring up the polling questions, Meg?
Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry about that. All right, let's go here for our first poll here. Let's launch that up. All right, so everyone will see there on the screen, we have 2 polling questions moving. We have, how would you rate the current state of gender equality and inclusion in the workplace? We have 1 very poor, 2, 5 very good. That's just a single choice. And then our second question, scroll down if you don't see it. Have you personally experienced gender discrimination or bias in the workplace? That's just a single choice there. We've got maybe about 15 more seconds or so. I see that we're almost at 50% participation. So get your vote in, people. Gonna end it in 5 more seconds. All right. Your results. If you look on your screen there, you'll see that we had some interesting votes here from everybody's landing pretty much smack in the middle there for question 1. We had, how would you rate the current state of gender equality as 3? So right about average. And then have you personally experienced it? We have 59% of the folks said yes, and then 41% of them said no. So a bit of an in-between there.
Okay, thank you, Meg. I just want to see if Ariana may be online now and we just can't see her.
It looks like she has dropped out of our panelist list for the moment. She might be trying to get reconnected.
Okay, so we will start with the panel discussions. We know that in working in a virtual world, we have to sometimes just keep going when things happen. And so I'm going to pose a question to each of the panelists and then give you an opportunity to respond. The first question is going to go to Chaya. Chaya, you have 2 minutes to share in what ways have you witnessed or experienced gender discrimination or disharmony in the workplace with awareness of intersectionalities of race, class, ability, and other dimensions?
Great question, Myra. I had gone through several challenges being a minority in the tech industry, especially I think in my generation, there were very, very few women in this industry. And I personally felt that education around diversity and gender balance at workplace is so critical. It's an important element for success in one's career. We may have a lot of knowledge in the field and experience in the field, but if you do not know how to address some of this gender bias or discrimination situations at workplace, it becomes a significant hurdle in one's professional growth. So one of the training categories of SheTek is around job preparedness. And I strongly feel that this education on gender balance is extremely important for women working in the sectors where women are underrepresented. So we have to learn to work with cross genders, cross cultures, and also find mentors and sponsors to help grow in our career, right? So we just heard from the previous channel how important it is to have mentors. And especially in an industry where women are underrepresented, it's important to find those mentors and sponsors who can help you cross those hurdles. So just a couple of experiences I would like to share. I worked in India before I came to this country, and one of my experiences working in a company where there were more than 5,000 employees, and I was the only women employee. And so there were instances where, first of all, I was heading a division, technology division, and I did not the people who were reporting to me were men, and they never reported to a woman. So it was very difficult for them to accept me as their reporting authority. And there were many hurdles created, including changing passwords without my knowledge. And whenever there was a deadline, for some reason, it was not done. But, there were some situations where, my experience was not counted, where I had to sit at a table with a bunch of men in the room. And whenever I wanted to say something or express, hardly people would pay attention to me. So I learned my little tricks of how to make people listen to me, raising my hand, or can I say something kind of thing, breaking, looking for that moment of pause where I could say something. So it was a bit of a challenge, but at the same time, I understood the situation where one thing is they were not used to having women at the table, and it was not intentional, but it's lack of any experience working with women. Also, partly it's ignorance on their side, understanding the importance of having a voice at the table and respecting women at the table. I think I learned the hard way. I came to this country and thought things would be different, but I had several experiences even here. Technology, just like many other industries, is quite a number of industries where women are underrepresented. So where you have to really make a conscious effort to make your voice heard, and also to gain the respect that you should be getting in the team.
Thank you, Chaya. Thank you, one, for paving the way in your wealth of experience. We'll have further times to listen and learn from you. The next person that I'd like to call on, Jorge. And actually, before I do, I believe we have now Ariana on the phone. Ariana, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. So before we go to
good.
Jorge, I just wanted to give you a minute just to share who you are, and then we'll continue.
Wonderful, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Ariana Blossom. I am one of the facilitators of the Jerry work. I am also a consultant. I've done lots of work with companies around team performance and leadership performance. But I also share, as Chaya was talking about, a deep interest in the gender work based on experiences that I've had, but I can save that for another time.
Thank you, Ariana, and welcome. Jorge, this question is for you, and we have 2 minutes allotted. The question is, as an HR professional, what are some key learnings or challenges you've observed in the workplace in relation to gender diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So I have worked in-house predominantly throughout my 25+ year career, and inevitably have seen that two major obstacles to women progressing in the workplace and creating an equitable environment. A culture that doesn't support women oftentimes from the daily microaggressions that they may encounter from colleagues, predominantly men, to attitudes that really inhibit their ability to move up or be considered for managerial levels. So the research shows up until very recently, 2021, McKinsey study that demonstrates that improvements have been incremental, but they still lag. From the very first promotion to a manager role, the numbers of women being promoted versus men is substantially lower. And as you move up the ladder from manager to senior manager, vice president, and the C-suite, you're seeing that gap increasing. And though there have been incremental increases in recent years, we still have a substantial gap in women representation. When you look at women of color or men of color, that gap widens even further. So I would suggest that it's a lot of old thinking. Solutions to that is really gender bias or bias training in general that helps people reevaluate their view on the world and how they view people, both unconsciously and consciously. And really corporations embracing diversity, inclusion, and equity programs more readily than they currently are. So that would be my synopsis, and that as best I can.
Thank you, Jorge. And as we move to the next question, we're actually going to have another poll. Meg?
All right, here we go. How effective do you find current gender diversity and inclusion programs? This is another rating question. We have rating 1, very poor, to 5, very good. You can see that on your screen now. All right, if everybody could just we're going to want to vote in this poll here. Just let us know what you think about current gender diversity and inclusion programs. Just give it another 2 seconds. And here we go. If you look up on your screen now, you'll see the results there. We had a participation here. We had one person gave it a 2. We mostly landed again smack right in the middle on 3. And then we have a couple in the 4 and even a couple really excited people in 5.
Thank you, Meg. And so as we look at that question, we're going to actually go to our first person to respond, Ariana. The question is, why has traditional gender diversity training in the corporate setting not been more effective? And how should this change?
Yeah, so I will refer to what Jorge was saying about old thinking, is that it's like the Einstein quote that you can't solve a problem from the same level, or you can't create a solution from the same level that the problem was created. You have to actually think differently. You need a new paradigm. And I think a big piece of that is, when there's so much overrepresentation of men in leadership on boards, what happens is that the gender diversity, the training can become just a checked box. It can be something that expresses essentially the same paradigm, where it's talking, not listening, that it doesn't really include, it doesn't give people the opportunity to really speak in a safe environment about their own bias, their own cultural background, their own experiences, in a way that allows people to see them and for them to see themselves even more deeply than they did before they started the conversation. So I think it's a few things. And I think that it's allowing people the space, rather than always feeling like you have to show up as the expert, being a guide. And that's one of the things that I really love about the gender equity work that Jerry does, is that it really gives you the opportunity to sink into the work, to be in a place where people are honest about what they feel, what they've experienced, what they want to see in terms of a better, more just world. And I think creating that space also allows for vulnerability. And so much of the corporate setting has been about avoiding vulnerability and protecting from vulnerability. And the narrative is changing throughout. It's not changed, but it is changing. I see quite a bit of it happening, which is maybe where you see some of the people who said a 5 in the response to the poll, that actually they've had some really exciting experiences in those trainings. But many of them really aim, to just kind of tell you why you should think differently, versus allowing you to process your own experiences and to be in the presence of other people as they process theirs.
Thank you, Ariana. And what you shared hopefully will jumpstart nicely our next panelists. We'll keep in, and to follow up with what Ariana was sharing, the question is, how can men become allies in addressing gender dynamics in the workplace? And you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Myra. The first thing is that men need to recognize that, women and people of color have been in a one-down position, for centuries. And so men need to consciously take steps and strive towards rebalancing that. There's a lot of things that men can do. One is to recognize, to include women, that women have long had this uncertainty about whether they really belong. Partly because they've been treated, not the same ways. So to treat women the same way that men treat their male colleagues, with the same respect. Another thing is for men to decenter themselves. Men are so often the center, and they take the center stage, and to recognize that they consciously disengage from that and make room for their female colleagues to come in, including recommending her. Including inviting her into high profile and high visibility settings where it becomes clear that this is not just a men-run organization. And then of course, to really listen, to really cultivate a deep listening and learning, to demonstrate empathy and validate women's experience, not to fix them, not to get into that fixing thing that men can do. So that's very important. Another thing is to basically assume that women are capable and competent, because there has been kind of an assumption in the opposite direction sometimes. And also to watch for assumptions about really progressive and vocal women sometimes are discounted for being that. So not to allow that to develop. The other thing is to validate and normalize women's experiences, to be a trustworthy confidant. To really hear women's experience in the slights and the dismissals and the daily microaggressions that do take place in the workplace, particularly in male-centric settings. And that way men are exhibiting their understanding. And then of course, encouraging women's talents to shine and really supporting them, and watching sexist and biased comments about assertive women. And then leveling the playing field, really pushing back on expectations that women have to work twice as hard to get to the same level of achievement, and to not take credit, of course, for women's ideas. And that's a common one. Another thing is not to give unsolicited advice, but to really be observant. And even as a man, when you were going to give advice, think about if you would give the same advice if the script were flipped, if that woman was a man. The other key thing is to practice transparency, to not have this in circle and out circle along gender lines, because secrecy and little inside jokes perpetuate kind of gender inequality. And also to include women on the sensitive corporate conversations around salary levels and this kind of thing. And becoming a mentor and a sponsor, really becoming a genuine, authentic mentor, as Shell was saying earlier today. That's very important. Men can really support women to advance in their workplace if they can mentor them skillfully with integrity. And lastly, to engage in women's initiatives and meetings, as a conference like this, for example, to really show your interest in participating and supporting your female colleagues to rise in their careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. And we did set you up a little because there was a lot more, I'm sure, that you could have shared. And so we thank you for opening up the box. And during your sharing, we also began to receive questions. And so I would encourage anyone that is in this session to put your questions or responses in the Q&A. And we will either try to get to it at the end or make sure that we have an opportunity to go through it and respond later. At this time, I'd like to open up a question to all of the panel members. And if you'd like, you may even respond to something that one of your colleagues have shared. And I'm going to ask you to challenge yourself and try to respond by 1-minute responses. And so the question is, how do you see experiences in childhood, family of origin, or of cultural background influencing professional life and workplace dynamics? Anyone can start first. I know that we can't see Ariana, so Ariana, just jump in.
I can go first.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, Myra. I think, the cultural background and the way you're brought up and your childhood experiences play a very, very important role on how you respond to situations, irrespective of this particular topic, right? But coming to the topic, the culture or the tradition plays a huge role, because as a child, especially in the culture that I'm brought up, and I was always told not to smile to strangers and walk your head down on the street, not cause any trouble, and also don't compete with boys for different things. I think that kind of instills a behavior which reflects when you are an adult. Because it becomes an issue to develop trust in the opposite gender. And then also you're not trained how to respond to any situations when you grow up. So one thing I feel that it's really parents' responsibility to ensure. I can speak, being a woman, I can speak from a woman's perspective. It's important for parents to teach the girls treat them with level of respect and confidence, and also teach the young boys about respecting women, see them as equals, not as someone they have to constantly protect or teach. I mean, we have a festival in India, it's called Rakhi Festival, where the sisters tie Rakhis to brothers, asking for protection. And I would like to see a world where this happens both ways. Even boys tie Rakhis to children, the sisters asking, protect me when I need you. So that equality has to come. And I think our traditions, the way our cultures and all this, the education that we go through, experience that we go through, play a tremendous role in the way we respond. I used to have a manager who would not look eye to eye. The reason being, he never thought women are even capable to come to work and to a workplace, because in his entire family, I found out there was not a single woman was working, right? So you're not exposed to it. It's not that he disrespected women, but he's not exposed to it, and he didn't know how to behave with the opposite gender.
Thank you, Chaya. And I know that Ariana was trying to pop in, so if the men would forgive me, I'm going to ask Ariana to come in at this time. Ariana, we cannot hear you. So we will try to figure out what's going on with Ariana's sound. And Jorge or Will, would you like to respond at this time?
I mean, I would like to kind of put it in chat, but validate this concept of allyship and sponsorship. Without those two components in the workplace, professionals can't get ahead, particularly women professionals. So there's got to be an affirmative effort. And that is one where you're identifying it as a problem first and foremost. And secondly, identifying high performance women in the workplace and then creating very formal structures that will support them through their development, and providing them opportunities for not just development, but opportunities for upward mobility. Without that sponsorship, you're not going to get ahead, and women will not be able to close that gap between men and women in terms of achievement in the higher ranks. And year after year, McKinsey does this study, Women in the Workplace, and the most recent study validates that those are two major components, that colleagues, coworkers are serving as allies, supporting them publicly, privately, providing moral support, encouragement, and then at the corporate level, making sure that there are programs that are promoting women for development and opportunities for growth. Without those two components, we're going to continue to have gaps.
Excellent point, Jorge. Yep, I agree with you.
Thank you, Jorge. We're going to go to the next question, and I'll say, Ariana, if it's possible for you to respond in chat, maybe that might be an option as well. The next question is, what is your vision for gender harmony and balance in the workplace environment? What is your vision for gender harmony and balance in the workplace environment? Will?
Well, to me, it's really men and women, and also, women of color and people of color who've also been one down, to recognize that each human being is a unique gift to life and to the work that we're doing together, and to actually begin to see people for their gifts and their qualities, and breaking through these structural gender and intersectionalities that have really divided the human family, divided the workplace, and to then take conscious responsibility for that in the workplace, so that what we would come up with then is a profound harmony and mutual collaborative environment in which each person is supporting all of the other people in the organization, irrespective of gender or race or any other of these isms. Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
I agree. A lot of great things said already. We are working in a very flat world. It's it's today's global business ecosystem, right? Where people are coming from different backgrounds, different cultures and regions. So it is so important to work in a synergy with and balance with all the various diverse teams. This kind of fosters an environment with innovative and creative ideas. I think it's important to hear from different perspectives, and women bring a lot to the table. It's important this is important to a business success, right? And growth. So as you know, studies show that when employees trust that their voice is heard, and they're treated fairly regardless of the race, gender, or sexual orientation or age, the environment, people in that environment are motivated and they contribute much better to the organization. So if we don't create that environment, they will eventually leave. So what is important is to really educate everyone in the organization in gender diversity, and the kind of challenges people can come across and how to address them. And there are many training programs that happen in organizations, but I just feel that we still need to ensure that there is a lot more a workshop kind of experiential type of training that is required in the corporates. And that's one of the main reasons why we are partnering with Jerry to create such program.
Thank you, Chaya. As I read the question and the word harmony, I got stuck on, because one of the other pieces of my life is that I sing. And I know as one individual, you cannot create harmony, but it actually is the blend of many voices. And so I think that in what you just shared, Chaya, and what you shared earlier, Will, it is the coming together that will create the balance, even if it starts off a little lopsided, that the more some step back and some come forward, when you meet in that center, that harmony is created. And so that is the voices of all of the non-binary, the male and the female, all of the cultures coming together to recognize each other as humans. Jorge, do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think we all can do as individuals in the workplace, and I've tried to do this throughout my career, is reach out to young women professionals of color, to provide encouragement, advice, take them out to lunch, ask them how they're doing, ask them what's keeping them up at night, what's stressing them out, what's preventing them from, their progress, and showing a personal interest. The burnout rates right now are extremely high for most workers. Women are bearing the brunt of that weight right now because of school and children at home and the COVID impact. And I think that those conversations can go a long way in preventing somebody from quitting, giving up on themselves. because the discouragement can be quite high for women professionals, and particularly, women of color who are experiencing all kinds of microaggressions, not just in the workplace, but in society. And that's one thing that we have to recognize, that as men, we're kind of immune to some of the microaggressions that women encounter just commuting to work or riding a train. Some of the things that women encounter, we don't take into account, and how that impacts their performance and their psyche in the workplace can be pretty substantial. So really, as an individual, if you're in a senior role or more seasoned in your career, seek out a woman in your workplace, especially a young woman professional, and ask them what they need and how you can help them, and become an ally, an active ally in their development.
So I'd like to thank you, Jorge, because you actually helped us to transition to the last question, which is around what is one action that we should take that will help us move towards a gender harmony vision. And so take them to lunch, give them a call, offer support, give them an ear. Jorge has already shared some of the things that I'm sure that he has done and that came to his heart. Are there any others, Chaya, Will, and possibly Ariana, that you might have?
I think Jorge covered a lot of great points there, but I do agree, right? This kind of education should be introduced early on, at the young age. And I'm so proud to be part of the Jerry work, and also to be on the board of the organization. I also have a not-for-profit organization where we are giving, shelter, education, everything, and creating loving homes for underprivileged children. And we have more than 40 teenagers in our organization. So recently I requested Jerry team to give the gender equity and reconciliation workshop to these children. And I sincerely feel for a better world tomorrow, it's important to introduce this kind of education in schools, high schools, colleges and universities, and obviously in the corporate world as well. We have a lot to catch up because it's important to encourage inclusive behavior within the companies. And I strongly feel men should be the allies, and it's something that we cannot avoid. I think it's important to have men as allies in this journey to see a better world, a better balanced world tomorrow.
Thank you, Chaya.
Thank you, Chaya. If I can pick up on that, and also in addressing the question in the chat around some men feeling that women rising is a threat to their power and authority. I just want to say what we've seen in our work over the years is that when men understand the reality of women's experience and the pain and the oppression of women that goes so often unnoticed, they don't remain the same men. This has been our general experience, that men are not aware enough of women's challenges. And so part of what we need is to create forums, which is something we do in our work, and I imagine it may be done in other places, but create forums where the actual experience of women can be really, truly, and deeply heard. And in our experience, most men are deeply transformed by realizing this, but it's not something they've been aware of. And that when they do become aware of it, most men, the majority of men, want to partner with women in an equal way. And they want a better relationship. And they discover through this process that the greatest male privilege is not any of these power and authorities that have been, conferred upon men, but the greatest male privilege is actually to participate actively in deconstructing this gender oppressive system.
Thank you, Will. And I would like to bring in Ariana's voice. She was able to send me a message, and her response is to invite women to become board members, intentionally seek out women to promote, and be aware that women are often conditioned to believe they are not ready when a big opportunity arises. Coach and encourage through that belief. I also want to raise what might be a concern with reaching out to women and becoming their allies and maybe encouraging them and inviting them out for lunch and different things, is do you feel there may be a hesitance on the part of men in positions of authority, proactively reaching out to help women, i.e. invite them to lunch, due to concern over perceived as inappropriate, given the world that we are very much living in today? As a man, I'm going to actually direct this to Jorge and Will. Do you feel that that's a concern?
I think that it's clearly a concern, and some men have noted that as a concern. But I think if you are, for example, taking somebody to lunch at the corporate cafeteria or a public restaurant, and you're maintaining a high degree of professionalism, and you're also being very transparent. If you're saying, hey, listen, I've made it my mission to really help and sponsor, a woman professional in this organization, and I've heard very good things about you. I mean, so I think if you maintain a high degree of integrity and professionalism in your discussions, there's no fear of that. Particularly if you're extending yourself to sponsor or advocate for a woman, the likelihood that that person is going to turn around and say that you were harassing them, if you maintain a high level of professionalism, it's slim to none. They're going to be appreciative, and they're probably going to welcome that overture by that senior person. So I think that it's a bit of a smokescreen to use that as an excuse for not doing it. Because if you maintain a high level of integrity and professionalism, I don't think you should have any fears of that being an accusation coming your way.
Thank you, Jorge. Will?
I think Jorge said it. The only thing I would add is that men need to be very clear in themselves about what their motivations are. And if there's any kind of mixed motivations, then I wouldn't recommend that they invite out to lunch. Or if they do it in a very public context, right, in the workplace. But basically, men need to get very clear that my purpose here is to support my colleagues and my female colleagues in the context of this workplace and nothing else. And when men have that commitment, then I agree with Jorge. I don't think there's a problem. Yeah, thank you.
If I can add to that, one thing that I always, for me, I have a couple of male mentors too. And the one thing that I always, my approach always has been that gender never came in my way when I approach somebody for their knowledge and experience and professionalism. I think, I don't know whether it is a good or bad, but I never think with respect to what is a gender. I always look for what is my objective, what am I trying to achieve through this relationship. And obviously you have to have your antenna active to see any situations or signals that you feel are inappropriate, and you should know how to act upon them. But I think if you start thinking from start discriminating people based on their race, gender, it's going to be difficult for to work in synergy in any environment.
Thank you, Chaya. I think that part of the beauty of the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International is that it is a very diverse program. It's open to any and everyone. And so while there may be some men, women, or they that are comfortable with maybe that type of invitation, there may be others, whether it be due to cultural upbringing or societal strongholds that may not feel comfortable. But in the Gender Equity and Reconciliation space, truly all voices are heard and all stories are received. And there's a covenant that's established. And so I think that there shouldn't be an excuse as to not do it, but we should always be open to the fact that while we are extending our heart, that there may be a heart on the other side that has been broken or that's not already there. And I think that's the beauty of this conference. That's the beauty of looking for mentors and having programs that support women, but then doing the session where there are men and women that are speaking to transforming together. Are there any other maybe closing remarks that the panelists would like to share in these last few moments. I'm going to check to see if there are any questions in the Q&A that I might have missed.
Is Ariana available?
Unfortunately, and I apologize for her, there is some technical difficulty. And so if you've seen me look down, I've been trying to see if she could get through.
Right.
But I think that it's still being worked on. So my apologies for that.
I just want to say it's an important work, right? So there are, many initiatives out there around bringing in gender balance at workplace. But I think having a more experiential and more hands-on training is important, where you create a space for people to share their stories, experiences, so we can learn from each other. It doesn't have to be all the time confrontational, but there could be ways to address these situations. And I think it's important for people to share those experiences and learn from each other. So I strongly feel that the organizations have to introduce sessions like this, where people, see one another, listen from each other, rather than just a theoretical program. So I'm really, really excited to introduce this program in partnership with corporates and universities.
Thank you, Chaya.
If I can just add on to that, what happens in that experience of creating a space where these stories can truly be heard is there's an opening, there's a change of heart, literally, that happens. And that is the aha moment, the awakening. That's what needs to happen. Because when people take it deeply into their hearts, then it becomes a commitment that they want to do something about. But if it's only on the intellectual level, people may hear the data, but still go back into their normal ways of behavior. So that's why what Shai is speaking to is so important. Thank you. And that's what the next session is going to be about, a bit of an introduction.
Yeah. Thank you. We also have a comment from Margaret Atwood that said, men are afraid, women will laugh at them. Women are afraid, men will kill them. Hesitancy needs to be out in its proper place. There's a great unlearning happening, and growth is often uncomfortable. Thank you, Margaret, for your words. Any other comments?
I would like to add my own personal experience with the Jerry work. And I came to Jerry about 4.5 years ago, and I fancied myself a fairly strident feminist, very vocal about advocacy in the workplace in my capacity as a human resource professional in virtually every workplace that I worked in, introducing diversity, equity, and inclusion, all of that. I thought I was pretty progressive on the topic, but it wasn't until my experience as a participant of a Jerry workshop that I fully embraced or appreciated the extent, magnitude, and pervasiveness of the patriarchy and the impact on women, and how they experience both micro and major aggressions in their life, whether in the workplace or in society, and how that impacts them on a daily basis. So this concept of men educating themselves about the experience of women of color in particular, because then you add an extra layer of challenge there. It allows you to develop a greater degree of empathy and appreciation for the challenges that women encounter on a daily basis. And until you hear those stories and understand the impact of those experiences that women have, it's hard to really fully appreciate, empathize, and then ultimately advocate for women in a significant way. That empathy and that ability to identify with those experiences, I think, is critical for there to be a cultural change in not just the workplace, but in our society. And I think there's a knowledge gap and an appreciation and empathy gap that exists between men and women. In both directions, by the way, because men are also impacted by the patriarchy negatively as well. But women, of course, are primarily impacted by that more than men. So that's what I would add in terms of my own personal experience and reflection.
Thank you, Jorge. And as we move to close this portion, I think that, and I'll pick up where Jorge mentioned that both men and women are impacted by the patriarchy and the harm, is that one thing that we have discovered in the space of Jerry, in the experiential space of coming together and sharing our stories, is that we discover we are not alone. And that in addition to you coming to tell your story and to begin that transformation and to bring our hearts together, you'll be surprised just how many others out there not only understands your story, but also too are living it. And so that's when the healing starts to take place. And so we hope that this is just the beginning of a conversation, and that we recognize that in this particular theme, we are looking at men and women doing it together. And so we'd like to thank you for this first portion of this presentation, and hope that after the break, you will rejoin us to actually try and live a little bit of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Myra.
Thank you, Myra.
Thanks, Jorge, Will, and Ariana. Enjoyed the conversations.
Thank you.
And back to Meg.
All right, thank you, everybody, and thank you for being here today. The team wanted me to show this slide here that we will be introducing an online course. We'll be back with you for more information, or you can on the SheTek website, or you can find out more information by emailing that email address you'll see at the bottom, programs@grworld.org.